Let me give you an everyday picture. Imagine you walk into a huge parking lot at night, just an ordinary one. One street light doesn't light much. Two don't either, but fill the whole lot with street lights, every row, every corner, and suddenly there's no darkness anywhere. Light piles up, it adds. So now imagine the universe. Not a parking lot, but something vastly bigger. And instead of street lights, it's packed with stars. Not just near us, everywhere, in all directions, for as far as you can imagine and farther. Here's the illusion we fall for. We look up, see blackness, and quietly assume it means nothing's there. That feels reasonable. Darkness usually means empty rooms, closed eyes, lights turned off. Our daily experience trains us to think that way, but now comes the gentle confusion. If there really are stars in every direction, millions, billions, more than we can count, why doesn't their light add up the way streetlights do? Why doesn't the sky glow? At this point, people usually jump in with an answer they've heard before. Oh, the stars are just very far away. That sounds sensible. It feels like understanding. But hold on, far away doesn't mean non-existent. A city far away still glows at night. Distance spreads light out, sure, but it doesn't erase it if there's enough of it. So already, the easy answer is wobbling. This is the moment I love, the moment where something ordinary stops being ordinary. The sky you've seen your whole life suddenly feels a little suspicious. And here's where human thinking gets in the way. We like neat labels. We like quick explanations. Once we have a phrase that sounds right, we stop asking questions. We say space is dark, file it away, and never poke it again. But nature doesn't care what we filed away. That dark sky is not boring. It's not obvious. It's a clue, a big one. And once you let yourself feel just a little uncomfortable with it, once you admit, wait, this actually is strange, you're ready to take the next step. Because the darkness isn't hiding an answer. It's pointing toward one. Now here's the sneaky part of this whole business. The night sky doesn't bother us because we're used to it. That's a very human problem. Think about noise. If you live near a busy road, the cars drive by all night long. At first, every sound wakes you up. But after a while, you don't hear them anymore. The noise didn't stop. You did. Your brain decided it wasn't worth paying attention to. The night sky works the same way. We grow up with it. Darkness comes every evening like clockwork. We flip a switch, turn on a lamp, and go about our business. So the darkness overhead starts to feel like the natural state of things, like the sky's default setting. But normal is not the same as explained. Here's a common idea people carry around without realizing it. Darkness means nothing is there. If a room is dark, it must be empty of light. If the sky is dark, it must be empty of stars, at least mostly. That feels reasonable because in everyday life, darkness usually is caused by the absence of light. You turn off the lights, the room goes dark. End of story. But the universe isn't a living room. Let me give you a little imagination exercise. Imagine you're standing in a huge field at night. It's flat, open, and quiet. Now, far away in the distance, there's a single candle. You can barely see it. No surprise, it's far away. Now add another candle, and another, scattered all over the field. Still far away, each one is dim, but keep adding them. Hundreds, thousands, millions. At some point, something changes. The field isn't dark anymore. It starts to glow. That's the illusion we fall for. We focus on how dim each light is and forget how many there are. So when someone says, well, the stars are too far away to matter, that explanation feels right, but it's incomplete. It ignores accumulation. It ignores the way light adds up when there's enough of it. And here comes the moment of gentle confusion. If the universe really is full of stars in every direction, and if light keeps traveling without getting tired, then darkness should be the strange thing, not brightness. But we flip that around in our heads. Humans are very good at accepting whatever they see every day as obvious. We're terrible at noticing when something ordinary is actually deeply odd. Once our brain has a comfortable picture, night equals dark, it stops asking questions. That's efficient for survival. It's terrible for understanding. So the darkness of the night sky isn't something we question because it didn't demand our attention. It didn't flash or explode. It just sat there quietly night after night, waiting for someone to say, "Hold on, why?" And now that we've said it, the question won't go away. Because if darkness feels normal only because we're used to it, then maybe it's not normal at all. Maybe it's a message. And the next step is to ask, if distance and emptiness aren't enough to explain it, then what is the darkness really telling us? Now, usually, right about here, someone says something that sounds very sensible. They say, the stars are just too far away, and everyone nods. Case closed. Mystery solved. But let's slow down a little, because too far away is one of those phrases that feels like an explanation without actually being one. You've had this experience. You're standing on a beach at night. Far down the shore, there's a single house with a light on. It looks tiny, dim. You could easily say, that light doesn't matter, it's too far away. Fair enough. But now imagine the entire coastline, from one end of the horizon to the other, lined with houses. Every one of them has a light on. None of them are close. Every single one is too far away. Now look again. Suddenly, the beach isn't dark anymore. It's glowing. Not because any one light got closer, but because there are so many of them. That's the part our intuition stumbles over. We're very good at thinking about one thing at a time. One star, one light, one candle. And yes, one distant star is dim. No argument there. But the universe doesn't have one star. It has an outrageous number of them, scattered in every direction you can point your finger. Here's the misconception hiding in plain sight. People imagine distance as a kind of magic eraser. Far away means irrelevant, gone, negligible. But distance doesn't erase, it weakens. And weak things can still matter if there are enough of them. Try a little thought experiment. Imagine you're in a giant room with black walls. Someone hands you a tiny flashlight and says, "Turn it on." You barely notice it. Then they hand you another, and another, and another. Each one is weak. None of them are impressive. But keep adding them, hundreds, thousands, and before long, the room is bright enough to read a book. Now here's the surprise. If the universe went on forever, filled evenly with stars, then no matter where you looked, your line of sight should eventually land on a star. Not nearby, but somewhere. And all those distant pinpricks of light should pile up. So why don't they? That's the moment where things get interesting, because now too far away starts to sound like a dodge, a comforting phrase we use when we don't want to keep thinking. And humans do that a lot. We grab the first explanation that fits our everyday experience and stop there. It's not laziness, it's efficiency. Your brain is built to get you across the street safely, not to unravel the universe. But nature doesn't care what feels reasonable to us. When you really push the idea of distance, when you don't let it off the hook, you discover it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just delays it. So if distance alone can't explain the darkness, then something else must be going on. And whatever it is, it's telling us something surprising about the universe itself, not just how far away things are, but how the universe behaves as a whole. And that's where the mystery deepens. Let me tell you about a very ordinary experience. You've probably done this without thinking. You're driving on a foggy night. There's nothing in front of you. At least that's how it feels. Just darkness. Then suddenly, as you move forward, shapes appear. A tree, a sign, another car. They weren't created when you got closer. They were there all along. You just couldn't see them yet. Now here's the common mistake we make when we look at the night sky. We treat darkness as proof of emptiness. We say, well, it's dark up there, so there must be nothing there. Feels reasonable after all. When a room is dark, the lights are off, right? But that's not how the universe works. Darkness doesn't mean nothing exists. It often just means the message hasn't arrived. Imagine this little thought experiment. Picture yourself standing in a huge open field at night. All around you, people are lighting matches, but they're very far away. Now imagine that light doesn't travel instantly. It takes time. You don't see the matches the moment they're struck. You see them later. Some of them, maybe, you haven't seen yet at all. Now ask yourself, is the field empty where you see darkness, or are there matches whose light simply hasn't reached you? That's the first moment where things start to feel a little strange. We're used to thinking that seeing means now, but when you look at something far away, you're really looking into the past. Not the poetic past, the literal one. The light left earlier, wandered around for a long time, and finally bumped into your eyes. So here's the surprise. When you look into a dark patch of sky, it may not be empty at all. It may be full of stars whose light just hasn't had enough time to get here. That usually makes people uncomfortable, because we like to imagine the universe as something that's just there all at once, fully visible, if we had better eyes. But instead, it's more like a story being told slowly, page by page, light by light. Another misconception sneaks in here. People often assume the universe has always been the same size, same stars, same brightness, just sitting there forever. If that were true, the sky really should be blazing. And the fact that it isn't is a clue that something about that picture is wrong. Here's where our thinking trips us up again. We're very good at imagining space. We're terrible at imagining time. We treat forever casually, like it's just a bigger version of a long time. But forever changes everything. The darkness of the night sky isn't shouting, nothing is there. It's whispering something much more interesting. You're only seeing part of the story. And once you realize that, you start to suspect the universe has a history, that it hasn't always looked the way it does now, that the stars you see are only the ones whose light has managed to reach you so far, which leads to a much deeper question, one that's hard to resist asking next. If the universe hasn't always been shining the same way, what changed? Let me start with something very ordinary. You're standing on a train platform. Another train rolls past you, slowly at first, then faster. You hear the sound stretch, drift, thin out. Nothing dramatic happened to the train, nothing broke. But the sound reaching your ears changes because the distance between you and the source keeps changing. Now here's the mistake people often make when they think about the universe. They imagine it as a big, fixed stage. Stars sprinkled across it like light bulbs screwed into the ceiling. Turn them all on and the whole thing should glow. But the universe isn't a stage. It's more like the trains are moving, the distances are changing, and the signals are getting stretched along the way. Imagine this. You're baking raisin bread. Before it goes into the oven, the raisins are close together. After baking, the bread expands and all the raisins are farther apart. No raisin is running away from another raisin. The bread itself is stretching. If you were a tiny ant sitting on one raisin, you'd see all the others drifting away and you might think, hey, what's everyone doing? But really, it's the space between them that's growing. That's a hard thing for our brains to swallow. We're used to things moving through space, not space itself changing. So we quietly replace the weird idea with a comfortable one. Space is just empty and still. Here's where the surprise sneaks in. As space stretches, the light traveling through it stretches too. It doesn't disappear, it just gets thinned out like butter spread over too much bread. The light becomes weaker, less energetic, less visible, still there but not bright. So when you look at the night sky and see darkness, you're not necessarily looking at empty space. You may be looking at light that's been traveling for such a long time, through so much stretching space, that it's arrived tired and faint, no longer able to light up your eyes. People often say, well, stars are just too far away. That sounds reasonable, but it's incomplete. Far away in a universe that's changing is very different from far away in a universe that's frozen. Now pause and notice how tricky our thinking is. We like static pictures. We like snapshots. The universe refuses to sit still long enough for that. It's more like a movie, and we're trying to understand it by looking at a single frame. That's why the dark sky is such a clever clue. It's not telling us there aren't enough stars. It's telling us the universe has a history, and you're seeing it mid-scene. And once you start thinking that way, another curious idea sneaks in, one that feels almost uncomfortable. If space itself has been stretching, and light has been traveling only so long, then the universe hasn't been around forever in the way we casually imagine. And that thought opens an entirely new door. Let me tell you something you've definitely done before. You're waiting for a friend who said they'd call. The phone is quiet. An hour goes by, 2 hours. At some point you stop thinking they haven't called yet and start thinking they're probably not calling. Not because phones don't work, but because enough time has passed that the silence means something. Now here's a very common mistake people make about the night sky. They think every star that could shine on us is shining on us, as if the universe has had all the time in the world to fill the sky with light and somehow forgot to do it. But light is like that phone call. It takes time to arrive. Imagine you're in a huge field at night and people are scattered everywhere with flashlights. Someone a mile away turns theirs on. You don't see it instantly. Someone farther away turns theirs on. You might never see it at all if the light doesn't make it to you before they turn it off. Darkness, in that case, doesn't mean nobody's out there. It means the message hasn't arrived. People often assume the universe is infinitely old. It feels natural. It's always been here, they say. The same way a child assumes the road goes on forever because they've never reached the end of it. If the universe were infinitely old, then yes, light from every star would have had plenty of time to reach us, pile up, overlap, and make the sky blazing bright. But here's the gentle shock. The universe has a past that hasn't had forever to speak to us. The night sky is dark, not because stars are rare, and not because they are shy, but because light has only had so much time to travel. Some stars are so far away that their light is still on the road. Some light hasn't been born yet. And some stars that once shined have already burned out. Their last light still drifting, like a postcard sent long after the sender is gone. That's a funny thing to realize. When you look up, you're not seeing now. You're seeing a collection of different yesterdays, some recent, some ancient, some so old they feel almost fictional. We humans are very impatient thinkers. We tend to imagine things as complete, finished pictures, settled scenes. But the universe is unfinished business. It's mid-sentence. So darkness doesn't mean emptiness. It means waiting. It means the universe hasn't had enough time to light every corner yet. And once you accept that, once you really feel it, another curious thought creeps in quietly. If there was a time before light could reach us, then there was a time when the sky had no stars at all. And that's a very strange thing to imagine. Let me ask you to remember something very ordinary. Think about walking into a theater before the movie starts. The seats are there, the screen is there, the room exists, but it's dark. Not because nothing will happen, but because nothing has happened yet. The story hasn't begun. Most people don't think of the universe that way. They imagine stars as permanent fixtures, like ceiling lights that have always been on. So when they hear the universe is full of stars, they naturally ask, then why isn't the sky bright all the time? And when they hear answers about distance or faint light, they nod politely and move on. But there's a deeper misconception hiding underneath, the idea that stars have always existed. Imagine lighting a campfire. At first there's darkness, then a spark, then a small flame. Only later does the whole area glow. Now imagine asking, during the first few seconds, why isn't this field bright if fire exists? Well, because the fire hasn't had time to spread. Here's the surprising part. The universe had a long stretch of time like that. No stars. No glowing points in the sky. just darkness, not because space was empty, but because the conditions for stars hadn't formed yet. That's a strange thought, isn't it? We look up and assume the stars are the background, but they're actually late arrivals. People often think darkness means nothing is happening, but in many cases, darkness just means you arrived early. Picture a city before it's built. No streetlights, no windows glowing. You wouldn't say cities don't exist, you'd say they haven't been built yet. The universe went through a similar phase. Matter was there, quietly moving, clumping, waiting, but stars, the big light makers, took time to form. Here's a little imagine this moment. Suppose you're floating in space during that early time. No stars anywhere, just blackness. You might think the universe is empty. You'd be completely wrong. Stuff is there, but not the kind that shines yet. This is where our thinking trips us up. We're very visual creatures. If we can't see something glowing, we quietly assume it doesn't exist. Darkness fools us into thinking nothing, when it often means not yet. And when the first stars finally turned on, well, they didn't light everything at once. They lit their neighborhoods. Their light had to travel, slowly, patiently, filling space the way ink spreads in water, not instantly, but over time. So the dark sky isn't just a puzzle about light. It's a reminder that the universe has a history. It learned how to shine. And once you accept that, once you realize the universe had a childhood, you can't help but wonder something even stranger. If stars had a beginning, what about the universe itself? Let me start with something you've probably experienced. You're driving at night on a long road. The headlights shine ahead, and beyond a certain distance, nothing. Just darkness. Not because the road ends there, but because your light can only reach so far. If you didn't know better, you might think the world simply stops at the edge of your headlights. That's a very human mistake. Now here's a common idea people carry around about the universe. They imagine that when we look out into space, we're seeing everything, all of it, as if the universe is laid out like a map and we're standing above it, taking it all in at once. But that's not how seeing works. That's not how information works. Imagine this instead. You're standing in the middle of a huge crowd, and everyone starts clapping, but not all at once. The people nearest to you clap first. Then, a moment later, the sound from farther away reaches you. And the really distant people, you won't hear them for a long time. If the crowd is big enough, there will always be people clapping whose sound hasn't arrived yet. So if you listen and hear silence in the distance, does that mean nobody's there? Of course not. It just means their signal hasn't reached you. Here's the surprise that usually makes people pause. When we look into space, we are looking only as far as light has had time to travel. There is a limit, not a wall, not an edge you could bump into, but a kind of horizon made of time. Beyond that, there may be stars, galaxies, all sorts of things, but their light hasn't arrived yet. People often hear this and say, so the universe must end there. That's the misconception. We confuse the limits of our view with the limits of reality. It's like thinking the world ends where your eyesight gets blurry. Try this little thought experiment. Close one eye and look at the room. You see less. Did the room shrink? No, you just changed your ability to see it. The universe hasn't gotten smaller because we can't see past a certain distance. We've just reached the edge of what light has had time to show us. And that's where the darkness comes from, not emptiness, not a lack of stars, but a limit to how much of the story has reached us so far. This is one of those places where our brains mislead us. We like clean pictures, complete scenes. We're uncomfortable with partial information, but nature doesn't care about our comfort. It shows us what's arrived and keeps the rest waiting. So the dark sky isn't a failure of the universe to shine. It's a reminder that we're standing inside the story, not outside it. And once you accept that, once you realize you're looking at a universe still in the middle of sending its message, another quiet question appears. What does it mean to live inside something that's still unfolding? Let me tell you about a little trick of the mind that you've probably fallen for many times. You walk into a quiet room, nobody's talking, no music playing, and without thinking, your brain jumps to the conclusion nothing is happening here. But of course, that's nonsense. The walls are full of vibrations. The air is buzzing with tiny motions. Your own body is a noisy mess of activity. It's only your senses that aren't picking up much. Darkness works the same way. One of the most common misconceptions about the night sky is that darkness means emptiness. Black sky equals nothing there. It feels obvious. Our eyes are very persuasive that way. But your eyes are terrible judges of reality. They only report what they're built to notice, and they ignore the rest without apology. Here's a simple imagine this moment. Suppose you're standing in a room filled with radio music, 10 stations, all playing at once. Jazz, news, opera, sports. You hear nothing, silence. Why? Because you don't have a radio turned on. Now switch one on, tune it carefully, and suddenly the room is bursting with sound that was always there. Did the room change? No. You changed how you listened. The night sky is like that room. It's not quiet because nothing is happening. It's quiet because your eyes are tuned to a very narrow slice of what's going on. Most of what exists out there doesn't announce itself in a way your eyeballs can detect. People often say if something were really there, we'd see it. That's a very human mistake. We confuse what we can sense with what exists. History is full of examples where that assumption fell apart spectacularly. There's a gentle surprise hidden here. The darkness of the sky isn't a failure of the universe to be interesting. It's a reminder that reality doesn't owe us visibility. Nature doesn't care what our eyes are good at. It does its thing, and we catch glimpses when we can. And here's the part that always makes me smile. The darkness that once made people think the universe was small and simple turned out to be the clue that it's vast, old, dynamic, and unfinished. The thing that looked like nothing was actually a message saying, "You're not seeing the whole picture yet." This is where our thinking habits get us into trouble. We like certainty. We like complete explanations. When something looks empty, we'd rather believe it truly is empty than accept that our understanding is incomplete. But science, real science, isn't about filling every dark space with confident answers. It's about learning how to sit comfortably with the darkness and ask better questions about it. So the night sky isn't dark because the universe lacks stars. It's dark because the universe is bigger, older, and more subtle than our everyday instincts expect. And once you really absorb that, once you stop seeing darkness as nothing, you're ready for the most important part of the story, what this mystery teaches us about curiosity itself.